Hello, Mark Sarazano from the International Piano Technician School. I am just trying out a YouTube live stream, and hopefully in the future we'll have more people attending. I didn't really give much notice, I just sort of turned it on. But let's just talk a little bit about piano tuning and how hard it is to get information that actually works. So, oftentimes we will ask people. I've had this experience where I've asked someone about piano tuning, and they try to explain it to me, but it just doesn't make sense. It's because it's a very difficult skill to teach. Piano tuning is a difficult skill to teach. So you really need to have some feedback. You need to tune the piano, and you need to tune it for someone else, and they need to hear it and give you their feedback. And the feedback has to be something that is like a high quality feedback. So saying something like, oh, the piano tuning is not good enough is not helpful. So what we do at the International Piano Technician School is we filter out the beats. So maybe people don't know what beats are, but beats are the wah 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 that is created when an interval is not pure. So another way of saying this is a pure interval is two notes that don't beat. So for example, um, first of all, let's just say that above every note is a series of frequencies. This is called a harmonic series. You can check on my YouTube channel. I think it's podcast number 6 that explains all about the harmonic series. So let's say we have two notes, and this is an interval, right? These two notes are an interval, and they have a whole bunch of other frequencies happening above them. Well, at some point in that series of partials above each interval note, there will be a coincident partial like this. So this is what we're listening for when we tune an interval. If we want to have a pure interval, we're going to tune that interval so that up here, that high frequency is not going wah, wah, wah. Because if those two frequencies are not the same, they're going to beat. You're going to hear wah, wah, wah. So for example, if the interval is a little narrow, you see what I did there? I took the top interval note, so my thumbs are the notes that we're talking about here, and my fingers are the higher partials. So if the top note is a bit lower, you can see now the coincident partial frequencies are not the same. They're going to beat. So here is wah, that's what it sounds like when it's pure. And then if the top note's a bit lower, it starts to sound like this. Wah, 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 wah. Now this narrow interval, because the top note is lower, this narrow interval is beating. The problem is that you get the same sound if the interval wah 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 is wide. This is a wide interval because I raise the top note. It's the same sound. So if I say wah 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 and ask you, is that interval wide or narrow? You don't know. You have no idea. So we use check notes, which help us to determine whether these intervals are wide or narrow. Wide or narrow. So what we do in the school is we provide bandpass filters that filter out those partials. So when I play an interval on the piano and it's not pure, I can hear the beating very easily. I've been doing this for 25 years. A beginner can't because they've just started. But and people have some people catch on right away, other people need a little bit more training in how to do it. But this is, by the way, this is the number one thing that people have to be able to do. Getting a good tuning hammer, being able to tune a stable string, being able to tune clean unisons, these things are all like secondary if you can't hear the beats. So at the school, we have all these. We have MP3s. We have free, by the way. If you go to howtotunepianos.com, There's a ton of free lessons. Go to the ear training course. There's all these web apps that train you how to hear beats. And that is the real challenge, is being able to hear the beats. So the problem is that when other people try to teach this without that feedback, it's can be very frustrating. I remember when I first started tuning. It was about 2 years, and I was tuning, and I was doing my best, and the piano technician was trying to help me, and he was playing major thirds, chromatic major thirds, and they're supposed to increase in speed, right? And he says, you see how these major thirds slow down? And I remember specifically what I said to him. I said, Troy, I can't hear those beats. I don't know what you're talking about. So it can be very, very frustrating. If he had a bandpass filter and he could have just recorded those major thirds and we could have filtered out and you could hear that clear and you could easily hear that the third had slowed down, then that would have been great, a great learning experience for me. So at the school, and you can do this on your own with anything you're trying to learn, I call it the loop, the feedback loop. And here's the problem. With any kind of performance activity, anything that you have to do and perform, you're going to make a judgment. You're going to do the performance and you're going to judge. You're going to say, I think that was really good, or I need to get better at that. But that is not the end, because a lot of times all you have to do is look at the audition tapes for American Idol. I mean, some of these people come in there and they're singing and they are horrible. Why are they there? Because they think they're horrible? No, they think they're good. That's the judgment part. Most people will do a performance, think they're good, and that's it. That's the end of their feedback. This is not the way to get feedback if you want to get really good. It's the easiest way. You just say, I'm good, and then move on. But that is not the way to get really good. You make your judgment, and then you must get the feedback. You must get quality feedback too. Not just your friend or your mom saying, wow, that was great. No, you need to get quality feedback that you can trust. So when it comes to, for example, tuning unisons, right? The unisons all have quincunit partials that are identical. So right here's the notes. Here are the notes, and here are all the partials right up here. And they're all supposed to match. And if they don't match, they're going to be beating. And it's sometimes very hard to hear those higher partials beating. But imagine what your ear is going to tell you when your partials are not in tune and they're beating. But your ear says they're not beating. Why would your ear say that? Because it can't hear it. Your ear can't hear the beating. Does your ear say, I can't hear the beating because I'm not that good? No, the ear does not say that. The ear says, I can't hear any beating because there isn't any there. And what do you have? An out of tune unison where the partials are beating. They're beating and other people can hear it. You can't, but other people can. Now this happens a lot with students of mine because they send me unisons, and what are they sending me? What's their job? Their job is to send me a clean unison. So we have something called auditory illusion. Everybody has it. Everybody suffers from it. It's very simple. You hear what you want to hear. So when somebody is sending me a unison, they want to hear a clean unison. So what do they hear? A clean unison. This is the only reason why I can think that people are sending me unisons for me to mark that are out of tune. So what do? Do I tell them your unison isn't good enough? No, that's not good feedback. What we do is we do a bandpass filter on all the partials. So for example, the first partial, right? So my baby fingers are the two strings. Let's say it's two strings. That's the first unit. First unit, you have to send us two strings that sound like one. So you get these two strings and you filter around that partial. And what do you hear? Wow. And it's like, that's not beating. That's a clean unison. No, 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 because this is not exactly the same frequency, right? So what happens is the higher partials, they're out a tiny bit. They're all out a tiny bit, right? All of them are out a tiny bit, like this. But the bottom one is beating like this. Wow. The second one is beating like this. Wow. A little faster. The third one. Wow, wow, wow. And the fourth. Wow, 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 wow. I can't get up there. But you see what I'm saying? For an out of tune unison, the higher partials beat faster. So what do? We filter the unison, play the beating partial, wah, 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 and then, so that's the feedback. That's the quality feedback. I don't say your unison isn't good enough. I say unison should have upper partials beatless. And then we filter the unison. And then what does the student say? My unison is not clean. I don't have to tell them. This is the power of really good feedback. The student is the one who comes to the judgment, who comes to the conclusion. The teacher doesn't bring them there. The teacher just presents it, and they're like, oh, gee, listen to that. So that's the first thing. Now, the first and second. The first is make a judgment, do a performance, do something, tune a unison. The second is to get that quality feedback, which the bandpass filter gives you. The third thing, which is very important to complete the feedback loop, is you must go back and listen to that, for in this case, unison. You must go back and listen to that performance and confirm that the feedback you got was correct. In small cases, very few cases, it does happen though, rare, there's something in the system that is wrong, where you made a judgment, the feedback says you were wrong, but actually you were right. That's very rare, but it does happen, and that's the power of actually going back. One of the benefits of going back and listening to the original performance to confirm that the feedback was correct. The biggest benefit is that now you're training your ear to hear what it should have heard in the first place. So you play your unison, and you hear, this is what you hear. That's what you hear. You hear nothing. You don't hear any beating because your ear isn't trained. But you just trust it. Most people stop there. Don't stop there. Get the feedback, which the bandpass filter gives you, and it's Ocean Audio. It's a free program. Works on Mac and PC. You filter that partial, and you hear wah, 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 and you're like, that is not a clean unison. I thought it was. I got the feedback telling me it's not. Well, I'm going to go back to the original unison that I tuned, play it, and try to hear that beating partial. So you go back, you play the unison, and guess what you hear? Wah, wah, wah. And you're like, what the heck? Why didn't I hear that in the first place? That's because of auditory illusion. So we've been talking for about 13 minutes now. I don't know if people can there, I see we have 5 people watching. I'm not sure if you can post any questions. If you can, I think you just put it in the comments. I don't know how this works. It's my first time doing it. So I'll talk maybe for another couple of minutes. If nobody has any questions, we'll just end the stream, and I will I'll start another one probably next Saturday. I don't know when. I don't know how often I'm going to do these, but I'd like to. I'd like to do them a lot more often, especially if people have questions. So the more questions I get from you guys, there's 5 of you out there, the more encouraged I am to continue to do this, because obviously you guys have questions and I want to answer them. All right, so I guess the other thing I should talk about is the general motivation for what I'm doing. So in the past, the general motivation for what I'm doing has been to sell courses. And what I have found out is that that is just a bad thing to do. That's a bad reason to do anything. So, partly based on the fact that I want to provide as much information as I can, because I've been going to the piano technicians conventions, and it's a completely different mentality there. The whole mentality of the Piano Technicians Guild is education. Although you might not think that. If you go to a chapter meeting, there's good and bad chapters, and some of the bad ones, they just make beginners feel stupid. But that is not what the PTG is supposed to be doing. So just quickly, this is what I'm trying to do now. I'm trying to change my message so I'm not like the whole idea of selling courses is not what I'm doing. So what we're trying to do is just educate. All right, let's see. If you don't have a filter, would playing a coincident partial help to isolate the beat sound? Yeah, that's called ghosting. So ghosting works like this. It has to do with what's called sympathetic vibration. Sympathetic vibration is when one vibrating body induces another one to vibrate. So the easiest way to show that is to press down the sustain pedal, take all the dampers off the strings, and yell into the piano. And you'll hear all the strings ringing sympathetically with your voice. Sometimes if you sing one note into the piano, you'll hear that back, just that note, because those strings are tuned and they ring sympathetically with your voice. So how do we do that? Do this with ghosting? You would press down your interval. Don't make a sound. Just press the keys down slowly. This will lift off the dampers. Now those strings are ready to be excited sympathetically. You get the coincident partial and you whack it. Staccato, staccato. Hit it and then let go. What you will hear is those coincident partials, the one from one note, the one from the other, ringing. And if they're not the same frequency, you'll hear them beating. The only downside to this ghosting is that if that upper note is not in tune with the coincident partial, you'll just hear nothing. And that's one technique to be able to hear beating better. The other is the bandpass filter. And there's 8 more that I have listed. If you go to howtotunepianos.com, click on courses and click on ear training, go all the way to the bottom, and you know what? I can just let me just paste it. You go all the way to the bottom, and there's one link way down there at the bottom of the ear training course that is how to more easily hear beating partials. And there's the ghosting is there, plus the bandpass filter is there. There's also, and in each of these items, there's a bit of explanation of what they are and how they work. There's moving your head, so it tells you how that works. There's knowing what they sound like. So I will give you the filtering of an actual partial so you can see what it sounds like. And there's a whole bunch of other things. So let me put that link there. How to hear beats more easily. Okay. Carlos, I would like to know more about how to maintain the unisons clean from the point of stability. Okay, this is a great question. It's something that really confuses a lot of people, even professional technicians. So let me give you the key, the number one key to understanding stability, and that is this. I'm not going to tell you how to get good stability, but I'm going to tell you how to ignore comments and instructions that are not going to work all the time, because that's what we want. We want them to work all the time. So here is the key. Number one, do not use a recipe approach, okay? Because it doesn't work all the time. And there's nothing more frustrating. Like, it's frustrating when someone tells you, do this and it'll work, and you do it and it doesn't work. That's frustrating. But what's more frustrating is they tell you, do this and it'll work, and you do it and it works, and then you're like elated. And then tomorrow you do it and it doesn't work. That can drive you up the wall. And the reason why um, it doesn't work sometimes is because all pianos are different, and they all have different friction, different non-speaking lengths, and different, designs. So this whole recipe approach doesn't work. Here is a common bunch of recipes that people are telling everybody out there. And when you hear this, you have to say, Mark told me this should not work all the time, and it won't work all the time. And that is, here are some of them. Number one, put your hammer at 12 o'clock all the time. I'll tell you right now, that's the reason why I figured out that this is wrong, because it doesn't work all the time, is because I did that. I put the hammer at 12 o'clock. Here's the second one. Go sharp of the pitch and ease it flat. Now, I'm not saying that this doesn't work. I'm not saying that 12 o'clock doesn't work sometimes. I'm not saying that going sharp and easing flat doesn't work sometimes. I'm saying it doesn't work all the time because it's a recipe instruction. So I did that. I put my hammer at 12 o'clock. I went sharp, eased it flat. Most of the time it worked. This time, one hard blow, horribly flat. And so the key, it's not the recipe, it's the feedback. So when you have a system that explains how stability works, then you know what to do. So for this example, hammer at 12 o'clock, went sharp, eased it flat, gave it a hard blow, and it went flat. That's a feedback approach. So what do you do in this case? What we teach is that you complete this sentence. This is the sentence you complete when you have a failure of stability. Number one, the string went sharp or flat. Two, because the non-speaking length, which is between the V-bar and the tuning pin, there's friction at the V-bar. That's what holds the string, but it can't hold it indefinitely. If that tension above the V-bar, above the point where it's called the termination point, on an upright, the string is vibrating, but when it gets to this point, it stops vibrating. It's the termination point. And then the string goes from that V-bar to the tuning pin. That's the non-speaking length tension. So the second part of the sentence is, because the non-speaking length tension was left too tight or too loose. And then the third part is, I need to retune this string and leave more or less tension in the non-speaking length. So going sharp, easing flat, 12 o'clock, hard blow, it goes flat. This is what the sentence sounds like. The string went flat because the non-speaking length tension was left too loose. I need to retune this string and leave more tension in the non-speaking length. So what you need to understand is that, anyways, I'm going to leave it there. If there's more questions about that, you need to be, in that particular situation, you need to retune the string and leave more tension in the non-speaking length. I'm not telling you how to do that because I don't want to bore more people. It might be too confusing. Carlos says, also, what are the main reasons and solutions for false beats in the soprano section? Okay, so false beats, the main ones are caused because the termination points, that is at the top, the V-bar or the A graph for the grand, and at the bottom we have the tuning pin, the bridge pin, the first bridge pin on the bridge. Those are called the termination points, and those need to be clean and solid. And if they're not, you're going to get the string, like here's the tune, here, for example, here's the pin, the bridge pin, here's the bridge, and here's the string, and sometimes it's up here and it's long and it's short and it's long and it's short, and it just keeps changing length, and that's why you get false beats. So you need to make those connections more solid if you can, without damaging the piano. So also, what we teach is never, like, there's a bunch of things you can do. You can burnish the V bar. So you actually take the string on, this is the V bar, here's the string. You take a screwdriver and you slide it back and forth. And that, the reason why it's not solid is because the vibrating of the string has caused a groove in the V bar. So when you do this, it polishes or burnishes the V bar. Burnishing is the act of polishing steel with steel, or cutting steel with steel. It has to do with steel on steel. Yeah. So the point is that there are a lot of techniques you can use to get rid of false beats, but you must prove first that that's the reason why. So, for example, with a string that has a false beat, I will take a screwdriver and gently, or a hammer shank or a brass tap rod, and gently press on the top of the string just above the V bar. So here's the V bar, here's the string. So just right here, top, just above the V bar, I'll just put a little pressure. If the beat goes away, if the false beat goes away, right away with the tiniest little bit of pressure, I know that that's where the false beat's coming from. So I'll burnish the V bar. There are also other tricks you can use for checking the bridge pin, checking the string on the bridge, checking the A graphs. There's different things different tests you can do to prove where that false beat is coming from, so you can fix it. That's false beats. Alistair says, does ghosting work for unisons? Yeah, absolutely. Ghosting is exciting coincident partials. Unisons have multiple coincident partials. The only thing that I find sometimes with ghosting is when you excite the coincident partial, the note that you're using also has a partial an octave above. And that interval also has coincident partials an octave above the first set of coincident partials. So sometimes when you hit it, I mean, it's still like you're not off the hook. Your ear still has to be able to filter out and hear, oh, there's a second coincident partial that's higher up. I need to not listen to that. So ghosting, in theory, sounds great, but it does require, a bit extra skill, and the situation has to really, warrant it working. Okay, Carlos, you're welcome. Hey, John, how's it going? So an A graph. How do you stop a false beat at an A graph? First, you have to check to see if that's where the false beat is coming from. So you have your A graph here, and you have this is like a bichord A graph, and you have your two strings coming through the A graph, right? So what you do is you just take your screwdriver and, again, gently put it between the two strings and twist. Try not to scratch the strings. We don't want to do that. Just gently twist, maybe round off the screwdriver. You don't want sharp edges on the screwdriver you're using for this. Just gently apply a little sideways pressure to those two strings. And if the false beat goes away, you know it's coming from the A graph. So what you'll see sometimes is you'll see in grand pianos, in the treble, for example, you'll see like a very dense felt that's like a key bushing felt. It's like, about a centimeter wide, I guess, or less. And you'll see people have shoved it in to the non-speaking length on this side of the A graph to apply sideways pressure to those strings and emulate the effect of the screwdriver that was in there. And that sometimes can get rid of that false beat coming from the A graph. Of course, if you're rebuilding and you have some false beats, you would just replace the A graphs. I have heard of people trying to face or reface those holes, the A graph holes, because what happens is those inside the hole there, right, where the A graph is, it's just causes there's a big groove it's been there for so long, the string has worn away. starting to wear away at the groove, and they try to file. And anyways, make sure that that's the reason why before you start going monkeying around with it. Would these false beat tests and treatments be explained in riblets? No. I have not seen them. I have not seen, like, I'm an engineer, right? So like a lot of this stuff I've determined by trial and error. Some of it I've proven by tests and studies. And like some other people have mentioned certain techniques that other people have said are no good. Like, for example, when you have a string, a bridge pin and a string, and it's like high up like this, what I was taught when I first started was you take the screwdriver and you bang the string back down onto the bridge. So since that, since I started learning that, like very shortly after, I started hearing people say, no, don't do that, because you're going to create a groove in the bridge right here. And then the string will not stay there. It won't stay in the groove. It'll ride up again. And then you're just going to have false beats again. Now there's a book, Inside Out. I've never read it, but it's supposed to be pretty intense, pretty in depth. So it might be in there. I don't know if anybody else has had that book. Ghosting, John, I guess you missed that. Ghosting is when you press an interval down and you find the coincident partial and you whack it staccato, and that will create, and it will excite the higher partials. Let me see if, I don't know if I can share my screen. Let me see. If I can share my screen, I will show you false beats. I don't think I can, unless somebody knows how to share a screen on a YouTube stream. I don't know how to do it. Oh, what's this? Share screen. All right. Use operating system settings. Allow YouTube to share your screen. Yeah. Okay. Sure. Why not? All right. Share the window or the screen. There's the screen. Let's go to how to tune pianos. And here's that article I was telling you about, how to hear beat speeds more easily. Now, I don't know if, I think I might have to do something to the sound, the audio, and make sure it doesn't monkey around, doesn't change things. Overlay, I don't know. I'll look at, I'm going to play it. And if it doesn't work, you can play it for yourself on your own computer. We're not seeing your screen. Okay, how about right now? Are you seeing my screen now? How to tune pianos, top 9 ways to hear beats more easily. Of course, I have to go back to you to see if you said you can see it. We're not seeing your screen. All right, Alistair, can you see the screen now? Top 9 ways to hear beats more easily. I'm going to go back to the chat to see if you said that. No, you haven't answered. Okay, I'm just going to show it and then you can check and see after. So here it is, number 2, ghosting. So here is me ghosting. I'm playing G3, B3, and G3, B3 has a coincident partial at B5. So I press down G and B and then go to B5 and staccato. And you hear na, 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 na. Ghosting only works if the staccato note is very closely in tune with the higher coincident partial of both interval notes. When it works great, but it doesn't always produce clear beating. That's that. Okay, let's see if I can cancel my live streaming now. Or I mean, not live streaming, the share screen. Oh, use, I don't know how to do this. Screen. I don't know if it's working or not. Anyways, let's forget about it. All right, so that's about it. Great questions, everyone. And this should upload so you can watch it again. Oh, yeah. One more thing to learn, I guess. That's right. Yeah, for me. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So keep coming to the channel. I'm going to be advertising more of these because I'm just very happy with having 5 people here. And I'll try to maybe make it more regular so that you'll know when I'm going to be doing it. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you again online very soon.